Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. This is Mike Howard. Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the Ronin Leadership Podcast. This is Mike Howard coming to you from Las Vegas, Nevada, and it's a Monday morning. And for a lot of you, beginning of the work week, I hope you were able to maximize your time over the weekend, enjoy time with your friends and family. My wife and I have been on the road recently. Janice, as you well know if you listen to this podcast or you know me, Janice and I have spent a week in Maui not too long ago, and it was great. We were able to spend some really quality time with each other. We'd both been to Maui before in the past, but never together. And so we spent some really great time, met some wonderful people. I guess as an aside, we were staying at this club level room at the hotel that we stayed at. And as we got to know the staff and the personnel, which we like to do because they're always taking care of you, and people in the service industry deserve a lot of our respect and praise because their job is to make your lives wonderful. Whether it's in the restaurant business or in the bar or whatever. And so we befriended a lot of the folks there at that club level. One person in particular, her name was Margaret, and I got to know her. And as we got to talking, we found out that we both grew up in basically the same neighborhood at the same time. So I grew up on the Monterey Peninsula. A lot of you know that already. A small town called Marina, California, which was right next to the then Fort Ord Army base. Fort Ord was one of several major training bases for the U.S. Army back then. My dad was career military, he was a sergeant. As it turns out, this person, Margaret, grew up one block over from me. She's 2 years younger than I am, so same age as Janice. And it turns out that we went to the same elementary school at the same time. I would have been in 6th grade. She would have been in 4th. We ended up going to the same junior high, and then eventually high school together. So I was a senior when she was a sophomore. And as we got to talking over the next few days, we knew some of the same people that my family knew. Her dad was military as well. Also, like me, she's half Japanese. And so it was just wonderful. Like those things, they always say it's a small world. It truly is a small world. And so it was wonderful to actually to meet her and to talk to her. And it was one of the highlights of our vacation. And we had a really great time. And then over this past weekend, we flew to Denver, Colorado. There was a Colorado Authors Hall of Fame ceremony. So I guess every year this Colorado Authors Hall of Fame, they induct writers from Colorado. We were invited by a wonderful woman named Mara Pearl, who's actually helping me with my audiobook. She's been an actress. She does a lot of stuff, written a lot of books. And then Judith Briles was the MC. I've mentioned Judith before to a lot of people. Judith, they call her the book shepherd. She's the one that actually worked with me over a long period of time to get my book from manuscript to publication. I owe her and I owe Mara obviously a lot. And it was wonderful to see these writers all telling about their stories, and all of us have similar stories that we found out as writers, right? You're not going to go to a book signing and expect to be Clive Cussler or whoever your favorite author is and sell 10 jillion books right off the bat, right? It takes time. The whole art of writing takes time and discipline. So it was really wonderful. That was a great event. But now we're home, and we're going to be home for a while until probably mid-October. We're going to take the grandkids and family, and we're going to spend some time at Disney World. But it's good to be home, and it's always nice to be back in familiar surroundings and get back more into the rhythm of business. One of the things I wanted to talk about today is interesting. This is a leadership podcast, and one of the things that's really important for leaders is to know how to relax, know how to take some downtime, and also make sure that your team is getting adequate rest and downtime. We were in Cabo earlier in the year, and I did a short video posted on Instagram touching on this topic. And it was interesting while we were in Maui, again at this club level area. Saw this, came in for breakfast, grabbed some coffee and got some eggs and stuff, and saw they have an indoor and outdoor section, and we were on the indoor section. The outdoor section overlooking the ocean, very beautiful. We saw this young woman there, and she was working on her laptop, and she had obviously finished her breakfast, a lot of empty plates and things around her. And then we left for a few hours to do some activities and came back probably a little bit after noon or something like that. And we saw that the woman was still there on the laptop. So we grabbed some lunch, and then she happened to come out and we started talking to her. Nice, very nice person. And I happened to mention to her about, it seems like you're working. And she said, yeah, apparently her husband was there with her, but he had to leave early the day before. She was actually going to some other resort. She had won something from her company, so she was able to go to several resorts in Maui. She just happened to be staying at the one we were staying in. And just kind of pinged her about working. She said, I just had to get some stuff done. And then she said she will enjoy the rest of the day. So it got me thinking again about this whole idea of relaxation. Kind of what does that have to do with leadership? As leaders, we are expected to be front and center a lot. If you're a leader, you're not in a 9-to-5 job, right? You work until the work is done, and you are expected to lead by example. So you put in the long hours, whether you have to do conference calls at 9 o'clock at night your time so that you can interface with your European or Asian teams or what have you, right? I mean, you're type A personality, most leaders are, and you work until the work is done. Expected to work hard, give 110, 120, 150%, which is fine. That's what we're getting paid for. But one of the things that really isn't discussed a whole lot in this whole idea of leadership is the idea of relaxation and downtime. Now, when I was working at Microsoft, as well as a lot of companies, they stress what they call work-life balance, or whatever each company wants to call it. Microsoft, it was work-life balance. And they stressed it. You rarely saw it. And part of that is an individual thing. You as a person working for any enterprise, public or private, you have the ability to dictate within parameters. We all have bosses, right? They're going to tell us what to do, and we're going to have to get stuff done. But beyond that, we can decide if we want to work at home every night when we get home, because that's just part of our DNA, and we like it, and that's just the way our life is. Or choose to sit in front of the TV and watch Dancing with the Stars or whatever your favorite show is. And so that's an individual choice. So from a work-life balance perspective, you own a lot of that. But when we're talking about leadership, when I go back to that leadership by example, there are two aspects that I really want to cover in this podcast when it comes to relaxation. Let's start with you as a leader first. As I mentioned, obviously we're working hard. Most of us are in pretty stressful positions, and it can take its toll on you. And I've emphasized many times to people I've talked to, or I've made speeches or interviews, panels, that a big part of being a leader is making sure you're staying physically fit, mentally alert, so that you can withstand the rigors of your job. As a leader, when it's time for you to get some downtime, you need to get some downtime, right? We're all guilty of it. I'm speaking to my mobile device, and that mobile device can be a blessing and a curse. Obviously, you can get information right away at your fingertips. You can communicate globally with this little device, with all the wonderful technology in these devices. But it can also be one of the things where you're constantly looking at it all the time. So if you're on vacation or in the weekend enjoying yourself and you're always looking at your phone, is that always relaxing? Probably not. One of the things I used to do on vacation, and it was really actually funny. There were a couple of years when I'd go on a Christmas vacation, holiday time, and inevitably something would happen. Right? We call it the balloon goes up. Some bad things going on in the world, a terrorist event, a bombing, or something, and we have to get on the laptops in the hotel room and get my leadership team together, do a crisis management call, and try to triage that particular incident. Now, luckily, that was not the norm. It wasn't like every vacation, but it does happen. And in those situations, exigent circumstances, obviously, vacation has to take a back seat, and you're going to have to engage. But let's say it's the norm. You're on vacation. You got a weekend. Whatever you're doing, I'm saying you need to maximize that time. Whether you're single or whether you have family, friends, you need to maximize that time. Because if you're always on this treadmill, 24/7, 365, you never get any rest, it's going to take a toll eventually. It will. I've seen it. It takes a toll mentally, it takes a toll physically, and at that point, you're no good to yourself, to your friends, your family, your spouses, or to your troops, to the teams you are empowered with leading. So you yourself as a leader need to make sure that when it's time for you to decompress, you decompress. Now, I came up with a formula that worked for me, and all of you have to come up with your own kind of rhythm of, I guess we call it rhythm of business normally, but I could say rhythm of vacation. I guess coined a new term, ROV instead of ROB, but say your own rhythm of vacation. And for me, what worked was if I'm on vacation, let's say I was still with Microsoft, my wife and I, we went to Maui, and typically I'd work out in the morning, and then when we get back to the room, I would look at the laptop for about 1.5 hours, 30 minutes max. Give or take 5 or 10, but that's the sweet spot. And the idea was not to sit there and answer emails or to ping my direct reports about a status of this, that, and the other. It was basically so I could go through email and eliminate the things that I didn't have to do anything with, see if there's anything from my boss that I absolutely had to respond to, because I didn't want to come back to work with 400, 500 emails waiting for me. I want it to be manageable when I come back. It's hard enough when you come back on vacation, you're back in the mix of meetings and deadlines, and then you got to go through the first day of going through all that email that was just piled up. So I didn't want that. So that was really the primary reason. And other than those 30 to 40 minutes, I didn't look at email the entire time. I enjoyed vacation. And for me, that worked for me. So that kept me in the sense that I had a bit of control over what was going on back home in the office, and I was able to manage my email, which meant that ultimately when I got home, and back to the office, I could be more productive. And that worked for me. But whatever works for you, works for you. Now, if you're the type of person that you just feel like you're wedded to have to look at email constantly on vacation, if it works for you, fine, but I would say that's probably not a good formula. You need to take that downtime. You can't be thinking about work all the time. And I know it's hard. Trust me. Both at CIA and at Microsoft, similar to a lot of you, I was in a high stress profession, and you're thinking about it, right? And I might have mentioned this before just to some of you, but my wife and I talk about this every so often. And my wife, as a lot of you know, was flight attendant for I think 33 years, and with American Airlines. Very stressful job, and she actually has said that she's glad she's not a flight attendant now, because all of you can read the news, you see what's going on in the world with, everybody having to mask up on airplanes. People are wrapped too tightly, and in my opinion, people are really thinking more about themselves than their fellow passengers. There have been a lot of incidents where flight attendants have been assaulted by passengers who don't want to wear masks, or they've been having to break up fights. And luckily, my wife really didn't have to deal with a lot of that, so she's thankful for that, and I am too. But one of the things we talked about was, as stressful as being a flight attendant is, because you're responsible for the care and welfare of people, who are flying up in the air. Once she was done with her work, her work was over. She didn't bring the work home. She didn't have to. It wasn't that type of profession. And I think that's a blessing, frankly. For most of us, we come home, at some part of our brain, there's still something going on about work, right? There's always a personnel issue coming up, or there's always a budget matter that needs to be dealt with, or some deadline that has to be met, or some problem. And that's just part of the job. And that's why I'm saying when you are able to unwind and relax, you should maximize that time because it's important. I think it's a very, very important from your own mental and physical well-being. Now, put that aside. The second piece of this is that there's an optics here as a leader. A friend told me many years ago, a friend as well as a leader and a mentor told me that once you become a leader, get in a leadership position, people are always watching you. I kind of didn't believe it at first, but he's right. And over the years where I've been in various leadership positions, I realized people are always watching you. It could be conscious, it could be subconscious, but they're watching you. They're seeing how you behave, how you comport yourself, and how what's your rhythm of business and rhythm of vacation. I kind of like that. I like that ROV. I like that I kind of coined that phrase. I'm going to use it. Maybe I'll trademark it. But the idea is, if your troops, your team, if they see you on vacation, and what you're doing is you're constantly pinging them about the status of this, about the status of that. And I'm not talking about, again, emergency, exigent circumstances. I'm talking about routine, run-of-the-mill stuff. Or if they see you constantly on email. And guess what, sports fans? They're going to emulate you. They're going to think that's their behavior that you need to have, right? It's no different than I remember back in government, I was in this one group. And it's not just government. I think it's a lot of places. But I remember 5 o'clock rolled around, and many of us had been there. So let's say by 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock. And I remember people would sit in their seats, and they wouldn't leave until the boss left. You've probably heard of this. They feel that the boss wanted to see butts in seats, before they left. Otherwise, some of the folks felt like the boss would think that they were lazy, that they didn't put in enough hours. Made no sense, right? It makes absolutely no sense. Just so you can be seen by the boss, then you can go home. It's kind of the same thing here. It's not apples to apples, but I think you get my drift. If you as a leader are doing these kind of behaviors and constantly engaging your team while you're on vacation, and they see you always on emails as if you were still in the office, they're going to do the same thing because they're going to feel that that's what you expect out of them. And that's not what you want to get across to your team. You want to get across to your team quite the opposite. You want to tell them, when you're on vacation, I do not want to hear from you unless you have some really pressing question that needs to be answered right then, or again, there's an emergency. Otherwise, go out and enjoy your ROV, your rhythm of vacation. Enjoy your vacation. Enjoy that downtime. When you come back, I expect you to be Johnny on the spot, and let's get back into it. But you should be telling your team that, and you should be modeling those kinds of behaviors. I've seen it too many times, where bosses are pinging you for something that could have waited a few days till you got back. They just feel the need to be seen and heard. Maybe they feel their bosses want to see and hear from them. So that stuff, like you said, always rolls downhill, right? As a leader, one of your main things as a leader is to model the behaviors that you want your team to emulate and to grow off of. So this whole vacation thing, the relaxation thing, is really important. It's not only important for yourself, as we got into, and why, for various reasons, it's important for you to get that downtime. But as an example to your team, it's really important for you to model those good behaviors so that they don't feel like they have to be on email all the time. Now, again, we're all built differently. And if people on your team, after you have told them that they don't need to feel obligated to check their email or to give you a status report or to do what, just tell them to enjoy their time off. If they decide that that's what they want to do, they want to, look at email all the time, that's basically on them. Everyone's got a different working style. And I can't say I've been always 100%, at that, but I'd say 95% of the time I was pretty good about adhering to that discipline when I'm on vacation or the weekends. The world that we're in now is so much more complex than it was 2 years ago, or 3 years ago when I retired from Microsoft. It was complex then, but with the pandemic, with political crisis globally, with all the stresses of life, economically and socially, division in the country, all these kind of things, all that really, those are pressures, right? Those are pressures that are external, as well as the daily pressures of your work. You may love your job, and I hope you do. I feel sorry for people that go through 20, 30, 40 years, 50 years or more of a career, and they hated basically every minute. A lot of it because they had lousy managers or leaders, and a lot of it maybe because they didn't like their job, but it was a job. I feel sorry for them. I was blessed to do everything I wanted to do in life, and yes, there were times when going to work wasn't always that pleasant, but for the most part, I enjoyed the heck out of my career and enjoyed the teams and the people I work with, the leaders that I work for. So I had a really great experience. But we all face those external pressures. How you handle them as a leader and how you handle them as a person, you own that. That's something you can control, right? That is something you can control. I think a lot of people feel out of whack nowadays because they feel like things are spinning out of control. But if you kind of take a couple deep breaths and stop to think about it, there are a lot of things under your control. And one of them is what we've been talking about today. Your ability to relax, your ability to unwind, to, as they say, unass yourself away from your current situation and to enjoy, right? When we were at Maui, I could see, I knew it, I could see these people, you see the ones who knew how to relax, and you see the ones that are always on their phones, and they're not just chitty-chatting to, Aunt Minnie or somebody. They're talking business. They got a beautiful ocean in front of them, the sandy beach, right? Sunshine, and, they're on the phone all the time. To me, that's not a vacation. It may work for them, it doesn't work for me. I guess the main thing I want to get across is get that downtime, maximize that rhythm of vacation, that downtime. Make sure you're taking care of yourself physically and mentally. And also make sure you're cognizant of your behaviors when you're on vacation. Because your team, they're always watching you. They're going to emulate you. They're going to do what they think you want them to do. If you're always on email, if you're calling them all the time, that's what they're going to want to, they're going to feel they need to do that when they go on vacation. And you don't want that. Again, you have to tell them quite the opposite. You tell them when they're on vacation, take your vacation. Get your downtime. I don't want to hear from you unless there's something that you really feel you need to get a hold of me about. Or if I ping you because there's some emergency that we need to take care of. Other than that, it's radio silence. We'll see you in a week or however long your vacation is. So those are the main points I really wanted to get across today. And I think it's important. There are a lot of things in leadership that we're going to discuss in this podcast and get some guests on here, and we'll have a lot of great discussions. But as we're getting this podcast off the ground, there's a few, level setting things that I want to do, and this is one of them because I think it's important, and I also think it's something that's really not covered or discussed a lot, either in podcasts or in leadership books. And I've read tons of leadership books. Rarely have I, if ever, have I seen anything dedicated to relaxation, and that's really, really important. So I guess that's it for today. We're working on a new podcast. I'm about to re-engage in writing, and I've been busy the last, I guess 6 months or so, after the publication of the book, really working on marketing the book, and then working with my I call her my business manager and my digital marketing person Kayla to launch our social media sites and to get those things up off of the ground. And I've been engaging in a lot of different things. It's just been, God's been good in terms of opening up doors with the news industry. I've been interviewed here locally as well as by some international outlets on topics of leadership. I've got some engagements that I've done, and I've got some engagements coming up this fall. So been busy with that, but I kind of got to get my business mode back on. I think I've told a lot of you before, used to carve out a couple times a week just to do strategy when I was working at Microsoft. You can get too busy with going to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting that you don't have time to actually strategize. So I would carve out a couple times a week. So I've now carved out some more time during the week to actually think and to write, put pen to paper. I'm looking at maybe a book on next gen leadership, and also I'm looking at writing fiction. As I found out from going to this author's induction ceremony this week, I'm no different than any other author. I've written some stuff for a fiction novel, a thriller. I like it, but I'll probably scrap it because I got some other ideas I want to do. But that's part of the joy of writing, and I love it. And I love this second phase in my life. So we'll be doing another podcast very soon. Again, as with any podcaster, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button if you like the content. Please provide any comments or feedback, and you can get feedback through obviously the social media sites that the podcast is on, or you can go on MikeHowardAuthor.com and you can leave comments. And if you want to talk to me, you can also arrange schedule time to have a conversation with me about anything. So looking forward to hearing from you. So far, the reviews from people who have listened to the podcast have been positive, very positive. So I thank you for that. We're going to continue to get better and better. And until then, have a great rest of the week. Remember, you work hard, but also remember to take time out for yourself, your friends, and your family, so that you're the best you can be for yourself and for the people who you are reporting up to, but also so that you can be the best leader you can for the people that you are privileged, and I call it a privilege, to lead. So until next time, continue to be a great Ronin leader. Mike Howard.